It's really relies on 2 steps. And if one step is missing, it won't work. But if you do both steps, it will work. So the 2 steps are, number 1 is how to beat your physical hunger. And this is about nourishing your body properly and activating your reset response. So you can write 2 steps in the chat and then write step 1 is beat your physical hunger. So step 1 is beat your physical hunger. Great. And then, yeah, so Leslie writes a great point. She says, I cannot eat potato chips. I haven't had them since December. If I have them, that's all I think about. So to Leslie's point, I want to shout this out right away. There are certain foods that I call trigger foods, and they're foods that simply trigger you. Like you say, you can't stop thinking about them. You can't stop eating them. And everyone has probably 2 or 3 trigger foods. And my actual advice for trigger foods is exactly what you're doing, Leslie. Just don't have them in the house. So you can still indulge in something else that's not potato chips. But if you have certain trigger foods and you know yourself well enough that you can't resist them, just don't stock them. There's no point putting that in front of yourself. That would be like putting drugs in front of a drug addict and saying, just don't have them. Like, why would you do that? That's silly, right? So it literally is an addiction. And what's super cool though, Leslie, is the trigger foods change over time. So for me, peanut butter used to actually be a trigger food for me for a long time, and even almond butter. And I just could not have it in the house. But now I'm fine with them in the house. They do not trigger me. So I think the trigger came from so much dieting and deprivation, where when I had them, my body would go, fat and salt, and I couldn't stop eating them. Today, I would say one of the things that's still on the trigger food spectrum for me is corn chips. I find it difficult to eat corn chips in the right amount, so I don't generally buy them. So it's just good to know yourself and then not have to have those there. And yes, you can throw those foods away if they're in your house and you know it's going to be a temptation. I have been known, after hosting events where we might have had a Mexican food night, I have been known to throw away or give away leftover bags of corn chips because I'm like, I don't need them in the house. My family doesn't need them. No benefit. All right. So step 1, beat your physical hunger. Step 2 is, who can guess? It's beat your mental hunger. So this is the actual emotional hunger. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, is once you do those 2 steps together, that's really how you can overcome your stress and emotional eating to the point where it's not a problem anymore. It doesn't mean you'll never do it. It just means you'll do it. And 2 days later, you'll go, oh, I'm actually back on track with my healthy eating and I didn't cause that much damage. In fact, 5 days later, you weigh yourself and you're still going well with your weight loss goals. So that's kind of what I want for you here. So start to think of the ingredients as fuel and nourishment for your body. And when you make that your number 1 principle for your way of eating, what happens is when your body is properly nourished, you will find it much easier to make the right choices when emotional eating or stress eating pops up. So a lot of women think that the reason they stress eat or emotionally eat is because they're stressed or emotional or weak, or I don't have the discipline or the willpower. What they don't realize is if your body is not nourished properly at the time because you skipped breakfast and you had the small salad for lunch and then you grazed and didn't really have dinner, or whatever it is, if you've been doing various diets or fasting or, cutting carbs or whatever it is, if your body is not properly nourished, then when the emotions and the stress crop up, your willpower to resist the food is very low, and your cravings for the bad food, the junk food and the carbs and the fried foods is extremely high. So pretty much you don't stand a chance. So when it comes to beating that mental, emotional hunger, my first tip is to heal your relationship with food. It's a process, it's a journey. You do that by being in this group, by sharing your journey in the members group and reading the other ladies' posts, seeing how they're healing their relationship with food, how they're changing their mindset around eating, how they fall off the horse and then reconsider things, and then get back on. It's this process of unlearning and then relearning. And so we're doing a shift away from the dieting mentality of being good when we think we are good, and then we're bad and we feel bad. And instead, we want to shift to this homemade mindset that we call eating for nourishment and satisfaction. So every meal is an opportunity to nourish your body and also satisfy yourself. And it's not about being good anymore. You're just living your best life, and that desire to self-sabotage falls away.